The guy where it says the agony of defeat, do y'all know his story? His name is Victor, I can't ever pronounce his name right, Victor Bagante. And that, or Vinco, that's him coming down the, he's at the Olympics, and he's getting ready to do the ski jump. And he tells the story, he actually survived. You're not really sure when you see the video. But he says when he was getting ready to go, he said the conditions got really bad really fast. You know, on top of a mountain in Switzerland or whatever you can imagine. And he said all of a sudden, the wind started blowing real hard side to side. And he took off, and right before, you know, these guys are going 60 miles an hour down these ramps. And he said right before he was supposed to jump, the wind blew really hard at the bottom of his skis, and he caught a piece of ice that had frozen over instead of snow. And it just, feet went right out from under him, skis went right out from under him. And he broke an ankle and he got a concussion, which, you know, if you watch that crash, that's really not that bad. I mean, you watch it, you're like, well, he's probably dead. But he broke an ankle and he got a concussion, all right? So I want to keep Vinco in the back of our mind as we study today. So let's go to 2 Corinthians, and we're going to be in chapter 4. In football, we always tell the kids they need to learn how to fall, which is a weird thing to say, you know, but you need to know how to fall. I was working with the receivers during our spring practices this last couple of weeks, and I was telling our kids, you have to take pride in blocking if it's a run play. You know, if you watch football, and you'll see a lot of times, if you watch the receivers come out of the huddle or whatever, you can tell if it's a run or a pass play, because if it's a pass play, the receiver comes out of the huddle and he's licking his gloves and he's like this and he's lined up and he's all excited. And if it's a run play, he just kind of comes out of the huddle, he walks to the line of scrimmage. It's just a run. The ball snapped and he kind of jogs off line. So we tell our kids, so you got to make every play look like it's a big pass play. It always should look the same. Come out of the huddle, you got bounce in your step, you're licking your gloves, you're all excited. When you come off the line, you're going as hard as you can, make that guy think it's a pass every time. But you have to take pride in blocking if it's a run. And so we're telling them when you're blocking this guy, you can't let your feet stand still. Because if I'm standing here blocking, and there's somebody running behind me with the football trying to run this way, and my feet stand still, and I stop, two bad things can happen. Number one, this defensive guy's not stopping, right? He's working trying to go make the tackle. So when I stand still, he's going to run around me and make the tackle. So I want to have my feet moving at all times so I can readjust and stay in front of him. The other thing is, if the guy falls into the back of my legs, and my legs are in the ground, that's how you break a leg. Right? You've seen on TV where somebody gets rolled up into and they break their ankle or their shin or something. Well, that's because their feet are in the ground and somebody falls into them. So we tell our kids, if you're pumping your toes at all times and you feel pressure on the back of your legs, you can get it out of the turf or you can fall down. And you got to learn how to fall so that when you fall, you don't break things. And so we were watching, last year, we were watching one of the greatest athletes ever to come through Lefford High School. And every time he would hit somebody, he would either knock them out or knock himself out. And he had no regard for his body. And we were talking about last year playing him at offense and defense, playing on both sides of the ball. And one of the defensive coaches said he'll never make it through the season. And I said, well, he won't make it through the first game because he's either going to kill somebody else or he's going to kill himself the first chance he gets. And one of the other coaches said something that was so true. He said, he has no idea how to fall. And so, you know, when collisions happen and it's time to hit the ground, it's just kind of like this, as great an athlete as he is, it's kind of awkwardness when he hits the ground. And when he hits, it's like, oh, what did he break? He got twisted up like a pretzel as he went down that time. And the only thing saving him was he was 17 years old and had some flexibility left, or if it was me or you and we went down like that, you know, it'd be the trauma unit for a while. But he didn't know how to fall. And we would talk about, you know, we should probably teach our kids how to fall, how to protect themselves when they hit the ground. Because in football, you're going to fall. When Noah was 5, 6 years old, we were doing flag football. The thing about flag football is it's safer, right? They're not in pads, they're not hitting each other. Well, we found out pretty quick that you still fall down. If Ryan's running with the ball and I'm trying to get him and, you know, we're 5 or 6 years old, when I get to him, I'm probably not just going to stop and pull his little flag. I grab a hold of him, I push him, I try to get that flag, and we're both probably going to fall down. The offensive linemen, instead of having helmets to protect their face when they blocked, they were getting foreheads to the nose. So kids were still busting their mouth. They were still getting bloody noses. They were still falling down, getting scrapes and bruises. And they didn't have the equipment to protect them. If you play football, you're going to fall down. In life, you are going to fall, okay? Let's look at 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, and we'll pick up in verse 8 and 9. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. You know, there's a song on K-Love, WBFJ, and The Message, whatever you listen to. It's got these exact lyrics in it, right? It's an older song, but they play it all the time. Think about the negative context of all of these things. We are pressed, not just pressed, but pressed on every side. You ever feel like you're pressed on every side? You got crap coming from this direction, you got junk coming from this direction, it looks dark that way, and what you just went through was horrible. Pressed on every side. Then it says, but we're not crushed. It might be there, but we're not crushed. Then it says perplexed. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. And then it says persecuted. And then struck down, but not destroyed. You know, the Bible also says that the righteous man falls 7 times. And that's a figure of speech, right? It doesn't mean necessarily that if you're righteous, you're going to fall exactly 7 times. It means you're going to fall, and you're going to fall, and you're going to fall, and you're going to fall. And you've heard the old cliche, it doesn't matter how many times you fall, what matters? How many times you get up, right? That defines your character. Because you will fall. You, just like the football player, you're going to fall down. You might break something. It's how you handle yourself in that fall, how you react to it, that creates who you are, who you're going to be. All right, great example. I was talking the other day with somebody, and we were talking about somebody that was in bad spiritual shape. And we said, you know, this person's kind of circling the drain. You know, the toilet's been flushed, and they're just circling that bottom of the bowl, and they're about to go down through it. If you have found yourself in life flushed completely down the drain, you probably, like me, have figured out once you've been flushed and gone down the drain that it's a hard, stinky road to get back to where you were before you got flushed, right? What if you could have figured it out before you got circling down the drain? What if you could have figured it out before somebody pulled the handle, right? And so I told this person, I said, you are circling the drain. That's where you are right now. And if you don't stop right now, you're going to find yourself out there with the sewage. And it's a long, stinky road to get back to where you started from. Many, many times people say, I said, how come you haven't been at church lately? Where you been? And they say, well, you know, I've just got so much going on, and I'm so stressed, and blah, 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 blah. And that's everybody. But it's human nature when things go bad to pull back from church. Well, I can just sleep in Sunday. I can rest Sunday. But it's just like that vine of fruit. I think I used the pumpkin analogy one time when I was raising pumpkins. If all you're ever doing is allowing the bad vines to keep growing, and the good vine, like going to church or fellowshipping with Christians, you're not participating in that anymore, eventually the bad vines are going to rob all the water and the nutrients away from the good vine. You don't chop off the good vine that's got the fruit on it and say, now look at all this crap I got to deal with. You cut off the bad vines and focus on the good vine. And that, any farmer will tell you that. But human nature is pull back, pull back, pull back. Because this is how we feel. We feel pressed on every side. We feel crushed. We feel despair. We feel persecuted. We feel abandoned. We feel struck down. And you've either gone through that, you are going through that, or guess what? You will go through that. Everybody in here has been through these situations. But you will face them again. If you live longer than another year, you're going to see these situations come into your life again. So it's not those situations that matter so much. It's how we handle those situations. And there's encouragement here. It says we are pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. It's not over yet. We are perplexed, but we're not in despair. Maybe we don't know how we're going to figure this out, but we know God's got a plan to get us out of it. We're persecuted. That's true, but God hasn't abandoned us. And maybe we are struck down. Maybe we have been knocked off our horse for the 7th time. But you know what? We're going to get up, we're going to wipe the manure off that we landed in, we're going to brush off our honeys, and we're going to get right back in that saddle again, right? And that's what makes the overcoming Christian the overcoming Christian. Let me show you something in Deuteronomy. Flip to Deuteronomy chapter 20. And we're in verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 4, Israel is about to go out to battle. Now look, when you read these stories in the Bible about people going out into battle, it's no different than today. You got soldiers puking, scared to death about what's going to happen. You got people that are really basically have turned into cowards. They don't want to go out there. And you know, the thing about battle then, and I'm not trying to minimize battle now, because I'm starting to go back this way, but you know, we fought the Iraq War the first time. Most of it was fought from the air. We either launched a missile or sent in an airplane and blew up the tanks. And the boots that were on the ground, they didn't see a whole lot of action. Now the boots that are on the ground now see a lot of the action. But back in this time, in Deuteronomy chapter 20, if you were going into battle, you weren't going into a command center and pulling up your computer screen and launching a cruise missile off of a ship. You were getting your sword, you were getting your shield, and you were walking onto the battlefield. And eventually you were going to be in hand-to-hand combat. About the furthest you got away was a bow and arrow, or a catapult. But you were probably going to be with a sword and a shield, standing face-to-face, hacking away at one another. So these people saw true hand-to-hand combat. So they were probably scared. I'm sure there were some gung-ho guys there that were like, yeah, all right, finally. But there was probably people puking, scared to death. Why else would God say this? In verse 4, for the Lord your God, he says, don't be afraid. In verse 3, he says, do not be afraid. Don't get terrified or give way to panic. Verse 4 says, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. See, it's God that has fought in the past for us, God that fights for us now, and God will fight for you in the future. So if you find yourself in 2 Corinthians 4, struck down, perplexed, in despair, remember it was God then that saved the Israelis. It is God now that saves us, and it will be God tomorrow that saves you from whatever situation you're in. The story of Vinko, let's go to that next slide, please. The story of Vinko, when he comes off the ski lift or the ski jump and gets crushed. Let me show you something in 1 Corinthians. Remember, it's not that he fell off the ski jump that mattered so much. It was what happened after that. If you read his story, after he broke his ankle, he went back to competition eventually, so he got back in the saddle. But he was never as good an athlete as he was before the injury. He never could quite overcome that. But because of those injuries holding him back, he started to get into coaching, and he started to coach jumpers. Now, I bet you he had a lot of what not to do's, right? If it's really icy and the wind is blowing, wait. Don't know yet, okay? I know what happens. In your walk, in your story, you know some what not to do's, right? You could all stand before the graduates next Sunday and say, let me tell you how to do it wrong. Here are the things not to do. Right? We've all got the not to do stories. We learn from those experiences. Well, if we fall, like Vinko, and we allow God to use it correctly, guess what happens? He went on to be a coach. He coached a young man that went into the World Championships and won the gold medal in the World Championships. He became a world champion because Vinko coached him. Because Vinko didn't say, I hate this sport and everything about it, and God, why did you let it ruin my life? Instead, he said, you know what? I can't play anymore, so I'll coach. And he took his experiences, his story, and he shared them with somebody younger, and he turned them into a world champion. What if we could take our story, share it with some other Christian, and they became a champion for Christ? Maybe for every one person we've witnessed to, they end up witnessing to 1,000. Maybe they're the next Billy Graham. Maybe they're the next pastor in a mega church, and 10,000 people get saved every Sunday. All because you took your story and shared it with them. Vinko tells a story where years later, he went about his life. He had no idea the Wild World of Sports was using his video. He didn't even know it. This wasn't back in the day of the internet. I mean, that video there was from probably the late 70s, maybe the early 80s. So this guy has no idea that he's famous in America. And so Wild World of Sports got these people together at a 30-year reunion or something, and they invite Vinko to it. And he's like, why are they inviting me to it? And he shows up at the banquet, and he said there's huge superstars. He said Muhammad Ali was there in his prime. All these huge, big-time athletes are there. And he's like, why did they invite me? And they run that video, and it shows him crashing. And for the first time, he realizes he's been on Wild World of Sports I think it was Saturday mornings, wasn't it? Every Saturday morning, I think it came on at noon, maybe. It wasn't morning. I think it was after Bugs Bunny. But they would show that every Saturday at noon. And he realized that he had become famous in America. And that they were showing that every week in America. And he said, I just couldn't believe it that me, a guy that fell off of a jump, had become worldwide famous. And he said, I was sitting there in awe and disbelief of it and still just couldn't fathom that it was all true. And Muhammad Ali walked up to me and said, can I have your autograph? And he said, Muhammad Ali is asking me for my autograph? He said, at that moment I knew I was really famous. I mean, it's Muhammad Ali. He's asking me for my autograph. And so he signs the autograph. He was a very humble man. He had a great story behind it and all. But he allowed the fall to be used for good. And so many times we fall, we get bitter, we get angry, we get mad, and we use it in a bad way. But God wants to use all of our falls to create an even better story. Something so amazing that the Muhammad Alis of the world come up to you and say, I want what you got. How do I get it? I've watched your story for all these years, and I want what you've got. Can you share it with me? That's how God wants to use our falls. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And we're in verse 13. It says, no temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. There's so much to that because we feel like, I can't do this. I can't get through this. There's no way. I don't know how. And it tells us in Scripture, no matter what you're going through, God is faithful. He will not abandon you. He's cheering for you. You can do it. You can do it. The Bible says that we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. And they're all standing there hollering out your name going, Billy, you can do it, man. You can do it. You can do it. You got this. You can do it. And you got to stand up and you got to wipe off the manure, rust off your hiney, and get back in the saddle. All right? One more thing I wanted to share with you. John 16:33. This is where we'll end today. This is a rather famous verse. Most of y'all can probably quote it. John 16:33. You know, a lot of times, if you talk to different coaches and different sports teams and stuff, and they've come into a situation where maybe it's a new coach or a new GM or whatever, and the team before they got there was perennial losers. You know, they lost all the time every year. I remember when I was at Ledford, and we were terrible in football, our best record was 2 wins, 7 losses, and 1 tie. And that was the best record we'd had at Ledford in, 10 years or something. The JV football team that I was part of, my freshman year, they had already lost the year before all of their games. The year before that, all of their games. So I'd come onto a freshman JV football team, and their record for the last 2 years was 0-20. And my freshman year, we lost all 10 games. So I was part of a program that was 0-30 in its last 3 seasons. And we got a new coach. And he said, the problem at Ledford is not the athletes. We have athletes. He said, the problem is we have a losing environment. And he said, one of the things that we do here at Ledford is we try not to lose instead of try to win. And that's the first time I'd heard that phrase before. Try not to lose instead of trying to win. And, on the surface it sounds kind of like the same thing, but if you think about it, it's much deeper than that. The person that's trying not to lose is scared. There's fear there. And that scared fear makes their decisions for them. Well, we can't go for it on 4th and 1 because what if we don't get it? We better punt. And then your punt gets blocked. Should have went for it. But the person that's trying to win says, man, we can get an inch. It's 4th and this much. Our guys can get this much. Let's line up one more time and get this much. And I learned from that lesson stuff that I carried over for myself coaching for years. I would always tell our kids, even in Little League football, I would say, guys, there's a time coming this season. I don't know when it's going to happen. It might be the first game of the year. It might be the county championship or somewhere in between. But there's a time coming where it's going to be 4th down and we need this much. And the whole team, all 11 guys on the other side and all their coaches on the sideline are going to know two things. Number one, where we're going to run the football and who's going to get it. So there's no element of surprise. They know we're coming right there, right now. And we got to get it anyways. We got to be able to get that anyways. Because if you want to win a championship, you got to be able to get this much when you got to get this much. And it's sure enough, sometimes that year, it would come around and we would say, okay guys, this is it. This is that moment we talked about. We need this much. They all know we're coming right here through this gap, and that kid right there is getting the football. And they're going to do everything they can to stop it. We got to get this much. And we always got it. We always got it. Why? Because we weren't scared of losing and not getting it. We never mentioned what if we don't get it? What happens if we don't? We never operated out of the fear. We operated out of, we're going to get it. We got to get it. We've prepared to get it. We spent this whole season preparing for this moment to get this 1 inch. We're going to get it. And so in our walk with Christ, what if, instead of acting out of fear, well, I don't know about that. I don't know a lot about the Bible. I don't know what I'd say. I don't know what I'd do. I don't know. Instead of operating out of fear, what if we'd say, all right, you need me to go this far, God? That's how far I'll go. Because God has been preparing you all season. Your whole story is about preparing you for that next step. That step that you're scared to take, that whole step, that great big step that you're so scared of, God has been preparing you the whole time for that one step. Don't operate out of fear. Operate out of you can do it. John 16:33. Jesus says, I have told you these things so that you may know and have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Now, if anybody is standing up here telling you that once you become a Christian, you become a billionaire and all is right with the world, they are liars, okay? That's not what Jesus said. This is red letter, Jesus talking. He said, in this world, you will have trouble. Not you might, not you could, it's possible. He says, matter of fact, you will have trouble. But then he says, but take heart, I have overcome the world. See, if your story is not about the fear, it's about Jesus overcoming that fear. Look, when Jesus was in the garden, he was not excited about the next day. He said, God, if there's any other way, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will be done, but yours. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I can't handle this cup myself, but with you, God, all things are possible. God, I know this next day, this next event, this next part of the season, whatever, I know it can be difficult, and I'm scared. But I know you've been preparing me to go that much further. You know, to get to be 1,000,000 miles down the road on our walk with Christ, you have to go this far first, right? You can't just flip a switch and be in Oz. You got to follow the Yellow Brick Road to get there, right? And it all starts with that one little step. And that's what Christ is calling us all to do. As these guys come up and play this last song, I want you to think about, are you winning? And if you're not, how about taking one step today towards Christ? Now, maybe you've been a Christian for a long time, or maybe you're not a Christian at all. And today is the opportunity to take that one step to get closer to Christ. And look, if you're scared of failing, Michael Jordan, raise your hand if you're a Carolina fan in here. All right, I'll pray for you. Michael Jordan, one, if not the greatest, definitely one of the greatest basketball players in the history of the world. If we're here another billion years, Michael Jordan's going to be one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Do you realize that he missed 50.3% of his shots? And he was the greatest, or one of the greatest. He missed more than half of his shots. He's going to fail. He did fail. He's going to fall. He did fall. Ryan might know this. Ryan, I'm putting you on the spot here, but you're our baseball guru. Do you have any idea who the career leader is in batting percentage in the history of baseball?
I would say Ty Cobb.
Ty Cobb. I told you he was our guru. It is Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb had the best batting average in the history of Major League Baseball. You think about, even if you, I don't know anything about baseball, but I do know Babe Ruth was great and famous. I know, I can name 5 or 6 guys that everybody would say, oh yeah, Joe DiMaggio, great baseball players. Mickey Mantle, go on and on and on. Ty Cobb hit the ball and got on base more than anybody in the history of Major League Baseball, above all those guys. And do you know his batting percentage was .366? which meant that for every 10 times he went up to bat, more than 6 times out of 10, he struck out. He failed more than 6 times out of 10. He was batting less than 40% as a batter. So more than 60% of the time he struck out. Because you're going to fail. See, life's not about winning. It's about what you do with the losses. So we have to focus on the wins. Because if you don't, all will happen to you is you'll get consumed with fear about the losses because you're going to lose. The losses will outnumber the wins. If you look at your spiritual walk and count how many days you sinned and how many days you didn't sin, guess what? There's going to be a lot more days that you've sinned. You're going to lose. You're going to have some losses. It's how we deal with those losses. And you've got to focus on the wins. And where do the wins come from? The wins come from victory in Jesus Christ. Because without it, the losses will just keep stacking up. But you can win in Jesus. And that's the winning that counts. That's the winning that matters. And you've got to focus on that win. Because you're going to have trials. You're going to have tribulations. You're going to have storms. The only way is John 16:33. Take heart. I have overcome the world. That's what Jesus said. Not you, Duncan. Don't worry, Duncan, you're so awesome. You've overcome the world. No. It says, I have overcome the world. Christ Jesus. And I overcome those losses and get victories through Him and through His victory. Any other way, it's going to be some more losses. I'll leave you with this last thought, and then we'll pray. Bill Parcells. If he's not already, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if they've inducted him yet or not, but he's one of the greatest football coaches of all time. He retired from the New York Giants, came out of retirement and coached the Jets, retired from the New York Jets, came out of retirement, coached the Dallas Cowboys, went into retirement, and he's been in retirement ever since. And somebody asked him, they said, you won a Super Bowl with the Giants, you took the Jets to the AFC Championship game, you took the Cowboys to the number 1 seed in the NFC and got a playoff spot. Everywhere you've gone, you've won. But you retired, you retired, you retired. Why did you keep jumping in and jumping out? I mean, you're obviously having success. Why not stay? And he said, I couldn't stay in it because the losses became so heavy and burdensome. Now, they might go 15-1, but that one loss would eat him alive. And he couldn't get over the loss. And he said, if we won, I didn't appreciate the wins. I just thought we were supposed to win. And so I was miserable when I lost, not happy when we won because I was expecting we were supposed to, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I would retire and then realize I loved the game so much I wanted to get back in it, and then the cycle would continue. I would focus on the losses, they would eat me alive, and I couldn't enjoy the wins. This weekend, go be with your family, go be with your loved ones, and enjoy the victories. Enjoy that we have a Memorial Day weekend because of our great nation of military vets and active service members. Enjoy that victory. You're not speaking German today because of our military. You're not speaking Russian today because of our military. Because in the 40s, the Germans wanted us speaking German. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Russians wanted us speaking Russian. There are countries out there who would love to have us worshiping Allah, speaking Chinese. I mean, we got a lot of enemies at the gates, but we are surrounded and pressed, but we are not crushed. That is a victory. Focus on the victory of Jesus Christ. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the victory that you have on the cross and victory over death and the resurrection, Lord. Lord, if there's somebody here right now that's not a Christian, that they would just say, Lord, I feel like I'm losing. And so the best way I know how, I ask you to come into my heart and save me. I want victory through you, Lord Jesus. And if there's somebody here now, Lord, that's been a Christian for a while, but we're focused on the losses, and we feel like we're crushed, we're in despair, and there's no hope, that we would just cling to your word and say, Lord, I'm winning. I'm winning through you, Christ Jesus. And so the best way I know how, Lord, I ask you to get me out of this routine of losses and failings and falling, and put me back on my horse, Lord, so that I can serve you, and more importantly, Lord, so that I can tell others about you. I want to be like Vinko and tell my story to the next generation, to the next person, so that they can become a champion for Christ. And we ask all these things in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. All right, well, I hope everybody knows that you are loved, and I hope you have a great weekend. Go spend some time this afternoon with your family and friends. Go eat a hot dog or hamburger with somebody.
Hey, this is Pastor Duncan Davis at Impact Church. Thank you for listening today. We hope and pray that today's message has impacted your life for Christ. We pray that you'll impact others' lives for Christ. Come and fellowship with us at Impact Church on Sunday mornings at 10:30. Have a great day and God bless you.